first panel, which is fashion brand NFTs and digital wearables. So if my panelists can please come up and adorn the stage. Give them a round of applause. Come on. It's like mid-afternoon. Thank you guys so much. All right, excited to hear what you guys have to say.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rebecca. Very interesting stats and wonderful project. Thank you for the introduction to fashion. What an interesting topic, right? We are 4 on the picture. Unfortunately, Adita couldn't be here because of some visa issues. Unfortunately, this is still the problem when we have to be in person. But I'm here with Charlotte and Eda. Would you maybe introduce yourselves, please?
Yeah, definitely. It's great to be here. I'm Charlotte. I head up partnerships for Space Runners. We are one of the largest fashion metaverses, digital wearable companies, trying to shape the way that fashion enters Web3. I head up partnerships for Space Runners, so working closely with Web2 fashion brands, influencers, creators, and really looking at how we transport fashion into Web3 and what that means, especially from an NFT perspective. So yeah, great to be here.
Great. Eda.
Hello, I am Eda. I am an ex-finance professional turned fashion designer of handbags and accessories, and I am now Chief Fashion Officer for ISO Fashion NFT by Talia Soref. We are a project of fashion that merges fashion, art, and technology. We do digital wearables for Decentraland, physical, phygital, and digital. And we also try to do a launch pad for artists and designers in the space.
Wonderful. I'm honored to be here with you both. My name is Zuzana. Last year, I co-founded with my sister the platform Wearables, written like jewels, but with V for virtual. We are an NFT platform dedicated to virtual jewelry and fashion accessories. So we collaborate with designers and brands from everywhere, and we bring their jewelry, their designs to life by making them wearable through augmented or virtual reality. Yeah, so all the designs on the platforms are NFTs, and then the customer or the owner of the NFT can wear it directly for mainly Zoom calls, like Eda. You have a lot of experience with that.
I love her company.
Or, yeah, other meeting platforms. Yeah, great. We are supposed to talk about brand NFTs and digital wearables, and I think a great start would be to talk about fashion NFTs that we know of. I mean, everybody knows the famous iridescent dress, which was sold in 2019 for 54 ETH. I think this is something which made history, and since then there have been many NFTs in fashion making history. What was your motivation to start with fashion NFTs? Like, what was your conviction that this is something that is really going to grow?
Well, as a fashion designer and coming from finance, I was immediately gravitated to just the opportunity that you could have as a brand to create a more meaningful engagement with your clients that we now call community. So brands are building way much more than a loyalty program, but just a way of them to be able to have more of an intimate space where that client, now community, can be. So it just makes total sense to have that space where you can have that community interact with each other. I feel that it's an enormous opportunity for a brand to grow a clientele. Obviously, we have seen that the luxury brands are starting in the gaming industry. They have seen the opportunity that there is to start with the younger generation that is already there, not only playing, but socializing, that they want to wear skins, they want to change their the digital presence. They want to have a digital presence that's everlasting and ever changing. And in a few years, these are going to be the clients that will have a larger purchasing power, that will not only consume the digital products, but will also consume their physical products, like what Gucci is doing, LVMH, in all of the gaming.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think fashion is one of those industries where there is already that tribal element. You know, people look to fashion to really tell a story on who they are, what they represent. And I think when that sort of moves across into the NFT space, there's huge amounts of synergy. So I think it makes sense that a lot of these luxury brands immediately, you know, were sort of leaders in this space. I think it's been really interesting to see how different brands have approached it. And I think each fashion brand has their own agenda. I mean, I think fashion brands are still figuring out where Web3 sits in their own companies. You know, sometimes it might be that it sits in the marketing team. Other times they're now building blockchain divisions in their companies. Maybe it sits in an innovation team. What budgets are they allocating to it? Is it coming from a marketing budget? Is it coming from an R&D budget? So I think their motivations and approach to it is changing, but yeah, it's an interesting landscape that's definitely evolving, you know, every month.
Yeah, that's true. We have seen many different approaches, like how the NFTs, the tokenization in general, is being used. I mean, even the luxury fashion brands have formed a blockchain on their own, Aura, right, to improve traceability, to improve the IP protection and so on. So this is really interesting to see. One topic which always comes with fashion is digital. Many people don't like this word, but this is a great step for traditional brands maybe to start working with virtual fashion. What are your thoughts on that? Maybe you have some experience with that.
Yeah, I think phygitals, especially in the fashion space, is incredibly important because, you know, fashion brands are first and foremost a physical brand. If we're talking about Web2 brands, and, you know, that's always going to be their focus, and that's always, you know, that's their art, that's what they do. But I think, you know, looking at Web3 and how that can enhance, you know, what they're doing in the Web2 space, there's huge opportunities, but it always has to come back to what is the physical experience for the customer, you know, in terms of the physical item, but also the physical shopping experience as well. So what I'm finding from the interactions I'm having with the fashion brands is, you know, how does this link back to my brand, my experience? How can it enhance that? How can it complement it? Perhaps it can drive more access. You know, maybe it can create a richer experience. So I think they have to exist side by side. And I think you can't really think about one in isolation of the other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that digital is physical and digital, and I think the client still needs a tangible experience. They still need to know that they're getting something physical, and then that it can be tied to a digital that could be some sort of badge, some sort of authentication of the product that will guide them or give them access to something else. So that's also providing more of a lasting value for that physical product because it's tied to something else. So we're seeing that the customer experience still needs that physical, tangible thing that they're gonna get, and that will bring them something else, some other access, like that loyalty program that we have been talking about. But then the opportunity for brands is that you can change some of like supply management and the production in the sense that you could either sell the digital first and you'll know what the demand for that will be, and then you can go into production knowing how much of the inventory you will have, so you don't have to carry so much inventory with you. So that's really an advantage and an opportunity for brands to just change that. And that would also place a little bit into the sustainability. We have been talking for 20 years about sustainability, but it's now that the bottom line is going to see that impact, and NFTs and any digital token can provide that for brands.
Yeah, this is for the traditional brands. Do you want to add something?
No, I was going to say, I think it also depends on who your customer is as well. You know, if you're a brand where your audience is perhaps slightly older, which let's face it, if we're talking luxury fashion brands, there's not many 15-year-olds that can afford £1,000 handbag. So, there still is an older audience that are always going to want a physical experience or a physical object as well. However, if we're talking to a younger generation, then their entry point, is going to be a digital experience. I can't believe how many 8 to 15-year-olds know what Gucci is now. When I was 8 or 15, it wasn't even something that I could even get my head around what a luxury fashion brand was, Whereas now, my 8-year-old nephew is asking me for Gucci skins and, things like that. So I think it completely depends on who your audience is, who your customer is, and you've got to have a strategy that caters to both of those.
It almost comes to the personalization or a very targeted approach to your target group, exactly. I mean, for traditional brands, this is the logical step. Start at first with a digital twin for their products and enhance the whole experience with the physical products. However, I think it's also a great approach with new startups who are virtual only to draw a little bit the attention from the physical product to find ways how, even in the real world, we can dress ourselves virtually, through augmented reality, through, photo montage and so on. So I think there is a little bit of a conflict, right? Because I believe personally that NFTs or virtual fashions shouldn't be used by the physical brands to enhance even more purchases for the physical items, right? It should be enough to have one white T-shirt which can be personalizable in the virtual space. So this is, I think, what makes it really interesting with virtual fashion, that you can actually do everything with these items.
For sure. I mean, it has, I think I was reading on a statistic about like 50% of people have been able to just buy more online because they can try out things.
Yeah.
So it's that another opportunity of creating an experience with your client that we haven't had before, of having a virtual showroom or being able to try sunglasses or accessories. So I think it's definitely it's another way of getting people to buy more online and feel more comfortable with it.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, Amazon announced a collaboration with Snap for eyewear. This is also a very interesting collaboration, also from the fashion industry. But of course, we want to wear fashion. Fashion is there so that we can express our styles, multiple styles, maybe with different personalities in different worlds, and also our beliefs. What are you most excited about when it comes to wearability of these virtual fashion items?
I think one of the things that I'm most interested in looking at how different metaverses and digital wearable companies are looking at interoperability. I think that's something that from the fashion brands I'm hearing a lot about is, what if I like how my dress looks in Spaceverse, our metaverse, but I don't like how it looks in Sandbox. I don't want it to be pixelated. How do I approach that? How in the real world, if I create a dress, it looks the same no matter what country you're in or what space you're in, but in the virtual world, it has to cross into different universes and it has to sort of adjust to their aesthetic. And I think interoperability is something that I think fashion brands are having to think about. Where are our stance on this? Do we just give complete free rein over to the user to take it into different spaces and allow it to adjust, to that sort of aesthetic? Or are they going to sort of contain it and say, actually, if we design a wearable, if it is just for, Decentraland, it stays there, it doesn't move across. And I think that's a topic that is still being discussed at the moment. At Space Runners, we have, our own tools to be able to approach that. But I think seeing how the fashion brands move with that and sort of seeing what their approach is going to be one of the most interesting things to look at.
I'm excited about two things. The concept of your digital identity and how you can just change that, you can evolve that. So we started with like PFPs, and we found the PFP that we liked, and then we maybe got into another project and we switched for that. But the concept of just like having a digital identity in terms of fashion, like I will be wearing some earrings or maybe I'm wearing another jacket. So I'm interested in just being able to just change that. But then I'm also interested on the concept of URL, so Unreal Life, which is the wearables that you can use in your Zoom calls, in your video calls. Super inspired by what Jules does. As a fashion, we created an earring that our holders can use them during their video calls. So it's like immediate utility. You don't have to wait for the metaverse to use them. You can go in your Zoom calls and use them. So I'm really excited about that, and just creating just those different personas on your digital self.
I think also what you can do with the fashion that you buy as well as an NFT, you know, if you are taking it into the metaverse, what can you do with it? Does it have a superpower? Does it have something that you can unlock? Can you wear it whilst you're participating in games or quests, or, you know, what can you actually do with it? And, you know, obviously the utility that comes with that as well, the access, I think, especially with fashion brands, the sort of how can I use this NFT to get closer and more access? You know, can I get access to pre-sales, limited editions? You know, can I unlock physical products? Can I attend fashion weeks or, you know, shows and things like that? So, yeah, I think that's interesting to see.
Coming back to your point about interoperability, actually, we have experienced a lot of, you know, brainstorming. How can we make virtual jewelry wearable in, for instance, Decentraland and so on? Because jewelry is something so small and in so much detail, and then you are limited in so many triangles and so on. It's really interesting how also different platforms are accepting different files or and so on. So we have been also dealing with these issues. That's why I'm mostly excited about augmented reality, actually. This necklace I'm wearing exists not only in physical, but also in it has a digital twin where you can wear it for your Zoom calls and change the color. Yeah, about this personalization as well. I think in AR there is already so much we can do. Right, you can not only personalize in color, but also in size, what you wear. You can add some animation, what is not possible, of course, in the physical space. And I don't know if you have heard of Omiyaki. She's an expert in augmented reality as well. I love how she sees the future, that we will walk through the street and we will dress the people on the street how we will want to, you know, wearing AR wearables. So this is really an interesting outlook into the future.
Yeah, I think there's no sort of bounds on creativity.
Yeah.
You know, you can sort of push fashion, you know, to wherever you want to take it. You're not bound by a certain material or a certain color if you can create it in the real world. So I think I think actually going back to your point, being able to test out different looks, I think, you know, brands being able to try different silhouettes, different molds, different colors, and seeing how an audience reacts to that, you know, seeing if there is an uptake, and, you know, looking at the advancements, you know, even in manufacturing, you know, 3D printing, and, you know, there's a sneaker company I've been working with recently who can, you know, create sneakers one of one. So being able to start with that NFT, you know, your avatar, wear it in different worlds. Do you like it? What colorways are, you know, most popular? And then actually taking that back and, you know, being able to then physically create it.
This is actually, there is a statistics from Accenture that 84% of fashion consumers or people who buy fashion on regular basis want their products to be personalizable. But only 17% of brands really offer this possibility, so there is a huge potential. So as you say, you create your own virtual asset and you get the physical twin with it.
And also that concept that then the customer becomes the creator is another thing, right? Tied to that, in the sense that now, you know, we have tools, for example, that you can use you can pick the silhouettes that you want. Is it a dress? Is it a jumpsuit? How it's going to be the neckline? And then you can select different fabrics that from the art of the project, for example. And then you will get the physical item, and then you will also get the digital item to be used in Decentraland, for example. So I think also giving like the tools and the participation of the client to be part of the creative process is another thing that will be very helpful in just keeping that relationship with the customer and the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was something I wanted to add to it. I'm sorry. Okay, I lost my my point, but I would like to come back to the brands because you have so much experience with the brands. And what are the best cases or best examples you have seen? What works maybe, and what doesn't? What do you think?
Do you know what? I'm trying to think if there's any specific cases. I would say it's more a format. I think brands that are thinking about Web3 holistically are the ones that are going to succeed. So they are not just thinking in NFTs in isolation. They're thinking about how does NFT link back to gaming? How does NFTs link back to the metaverse? How does it link back to blockchain? How does it link back to my CRM system? I think CRM is actually the biggest use case. I think that brands can get their head around is this is a tool that allows me to foster my customers and, communicate with them. But I think those fashion brands that are thinking about it holistically as one strategy, as opposed to I'm just going to do an NFT drop because it's going to get me loads of press, which has been the approach. And I think, some brands, maybe some of the early brands that were looking at it as just a PR and marketing driver, they're looking at it now going, what next? And I think the brands that have maybe sat back, maybe dabbled a little bit in it, tried different things, but are thinking about it as a long-term strategy, and like I said, holistically, I think those are the ones that are going to do the best.
Yeah, I think like brands definitely should test the waters, but they also need to be very, in mind and conscious of their DNA of the brand. So don't go into something that makes no sense for your brand. There's a million different options that you can go to, but if it doesn't really relate to the client that you have, to your mission, to your values, then you're just going into the space because it's another hype thing to do or not really. Yeah.
And I think also, like, what is your goal? Is it to future-proof your brand? Are you trying to get your brand in front of Gen Z? Do you want to sort of make sure that you're future-proofing the brand for the future? In which case, a partnership with a Roblox, that's going to be perfect because you're going to be speaking to, such a young generation. If it's more about, really fostering and growing a community, and using Web3 for that, if you've got an older audience, then perhaps it's more about, how you can create richer experiences or what access you can offer, what utility you're giving the consumers. So I think being really clear on what is the business objective and then how can Web3 support that as opposed to, I'm just going to do a drop because everyone's doing it and I need to be up to speed.
And the language that they use to communicate that. We have seen recently that, Starbucks, it's not using the word NFTs anywhere. It's a digital community, it's a digital collectible. It's really not a digital wearable, it's a filter, it's a lens. So we have to use the language that will make sense to your customer so they will feel comfortable in testing it, in being part of the process. And I think you're seeing how that language is just being twitched on the space, just for that purpose.
I think that's where education's also key because I think so many of the fashion brands I speak to, they're like, my audience isn't a Web3 customer. They are not in this space, they are, so how do I get them to come across? If you're not bringing me an audience because, the Web3 community is still so small, then how am I getting my user to actually come into this space? And I think education is such a big part of that at the moment. And I think that's also where influencers and creators have such a big role, especially in the fashion world, is educating that fashion brand's audience and telling them, how do they create a wallet? What is a wallet? What value does having this NFT mean to me? So I think education is also...
Absolutely, yeah. Education, using your data you have on your customers, adapting to your customers and exploring new customers in other yeah, spaces and so on. I know we have 14 seconds. Can I ask you a
Yeah.
last question? Last question. What are you going to wear in future?
I mean, I've got to say sneakers. We started off as a sneaker brand, and I do love my sneakers. So yeah, that's what I'm most excited about.
Well, I'm a handbag freak, so I love my handbags. But and I'm trying to figure out how to actually incorporate that. But accessories is also my main thing. So digital earrings are my go-to.
Yeah, actually, thank you for mentioning that because I don't want to get my whole ear pierced, but I would like to have a lot of ear cuffs and very heavy earrings. So this is what I'm really excited about. Yeah, we are still around for the whole day. I think come and talk to us. We will be happy to meet you, everybody. And,
Yes.
thank you very much.
Thank you.